Up next, what's the new information that we've just uncovered in the last few months that ties together Dick Cheney, Watergate burglars, and the JFK assassination? On Sunday, the Discovery Channel, on November 22nd, is going to be airing a special called Did the Mob Kill JFK at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That Discovery Channel piece, whatever you call it, a TV show hour, is going to feature Lamar Waldron, the primary author of this book, Legacy of Secrecy, The Long Shadow of the JFK Assassination, which Vanity Fair referred to as awesome. The subtitle, Robert Kennedy, the Mafia, and the Assassination of Martin Luther King. And its co-author will also be in that TV show, and that's a guy you may know, Thom Hartmann. And so Lamar Waldron, who we have for years and years and years been working on this thing, and Lamar has done just absolutely mind-boggling yeoman's work on it, on the line with us right now from his home in Atlanta. Lamar, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Tom. You know, this time of year, and this is coming up on the 46th anniversary, it seems like there's always some explosive new information coming out that, again, you and I have been digging into this for almost 20 years, and this year is no exception. So the most important information is just coming out this week. And I mean, you know, you and I learned some years ago, actually, some pieces of this puzzle, the Bernard Barker piece of it, for example, but we're unable to reveal that until just recently, in part because he just recently died. Share with me your thoughts on, or what we've learned that is the real. What are the new revelations? What are the things that nobody knew before about the Kennedy assassination and about just this whole issue that I brought up? Sure, because what I'm about to say and what we've uncovered, it not only really helps to finally explain the JFK assassination and Watergate, but it also sheds new light on this continued withholding of information from Congress and the public by agencies like the CIA and the FBI and politicians like Dick Cheney. Even explains, as your listeners will hear, why US-Cuba relations have been frozen since the JFK assassination.
Right. So let's start with a Watergate burglar, Bernard Barker.
Bernard Barker. And for a lot of your younger listeners, you know, Watergate was the scandal that brought down Richard Nixon. These people were caught in the Watergate, part of a big, dirty tricks operation, repeated break-ins at the Watergate, and even...
Well, and the Watergate was the home of the Democratic National Committee's offices. That's what, therefore, the break-in there.
And they were literally caught in the office red-handed, and yes. G. Gordon Liddy, Bernard Barker, and a lot of other Cuban exiles like Bernard Barker. Liddy was very different from a lot of these others. And just to get right to the punch, the biggest revelations are that are just coming out this week is that Bernard Barker, this convicted Watergate burglar, and Lee Harvey Oswald, back in November of '63, were working on the very same top-secret operation for the CIA. But it wasn't Oswald. Instead, it was Bernard Barker that actually helped to assassinate JFK.
Right.
Literally on November 22nd. And Bernard Barker, though he was a CIA agent and had been one for about a few years at that point, his real boss, the people he worked for years, were the Mafia, specifically Mafia godfather Santo Trafficante. And as you started to say, Tom, we first learned this from a close associate of Robert Kennedy back in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And both because Barker was alive, and we needed evidence to back that up. I mean, you and I treat all sources skeptically. We look for supporting information. And so then we basically spent the next 17 years looking for information to document Barker's involvement in JFK's murder. And we came up
with
found
it.
With a ton of it. There's 3 new chapters in this updated trade paperback of Legacy of Secrecy. And, I mean, this even includes an eyewitness from law enforcement who saw Bernard Barker on the grassy knoll in Dealey Plaza, behind the picket fence, within seconds of the shooting, and even Barker's own words about what he saw that day are just so amazing and incriminating, but they've been overlooked for so many years.
And here's one other little factoid that will make many people's brains explode. Most people are familiar with the name E. Howard Hunt. Bernard Barker was his...
assistant. And E. Howard Hunt was the mastermind of the Watergate break-ins, plural. There were 3, but it's interesting when they came to work together.
the CIA actually assigned Barker to work for Hunt when the CIA's plots with the Mafia to assassinate Fidel Castro began under Vice President Richard Nixon.
Right, and it was going to be part of Nixon's October surprise to try and blow up Kennedy's attempt to become president, and Bernard Barker was also working for Santo Trafficante, the Mafia godfather, who was arguably the lead character in the plan to assassinate Jack Kennedy.
Well, exactly right. In other words, so what you have, if you go back to the summer of 1960 and the fall of 1960, the elections coming up between Vice President Nixon and JFK, President Eisenhower has delegated to Nixon authority for these covert Cuban operations. And it's actually Nixon, who has longtime Mafia ties, going back to the beginning of his political career. Right. He's the one who, we can now document, pressures the CIA to ramp up and really go really whole hog with the Mafia, specifically Santo Trafficante, to try and assassinate Fidel. And it's exactly then, that month, in September of 1960, that Bernard Barker is assigned to work as E. Howard Hunt's assistant. And it's now
on the first October surprise.
Exactly. This would be the original October surprise, because the Mafia gave a little support to JFK. The Mafia gave overwhelming support to their old buddy Richard Nixon. Yep. And so they assigned Barker to work with Hunt because, as we now know, and was withheld from the Watergate investigation and all congressional investigations, the FBI knew that Barker was Mafia since the late 1940s. But so, of course, to the CIA, it made perfect sense to assign one of Trafficante's men, make him a CIA agent, and assign him to work with E. Howard Hunt. Of course, Fidel was not assassinated, but the CIA continued to work with the Mafia to kill Fidel. And Hunt and Barker continued to work together through the Bay of Pigs.
So let me just summarize this for our listeners, because there's been a lot of information here, and what we have found in summary is that, first of all, Richard Nixon was planning an October surprise before the election in 1960, because Jack Kennedy was beating him up about the fact that Fidel Castro had gone communist on the Eisenhower-Nixon administration's watch. And Nixon was the vice president. He was running for president against Jack Kennedy. He hired the mob, who were his good buddies, and brought Bernard Barker into this operation to assassinate Castro. And that was going to be his October surprise. Didn't quite work out that way. Barker stayed in the program, was E. Howard Hunt's assistant, number 3 guy, as I recall, in the CIA at the time. And Bernard Barker was also working for Santo Trafficante. He leaked to Trafficante a year later Bobby Kennedy's secret plan to assassinate Castro and have a coup in Cuba, and thus sold out the Kennedy family and facilitated the assassination. And in fact, we can even put Barker at the scene of the crime in Dallas. And all of this is brand new information that's in the new paperback edition of Legacy of Secrecy that is just now out. Have I summarized that well, Lamar?
Pretty well. That the only thing, E. Howard Hunt wasn't that high in the CIA. He was a high CIA official, but he
wasn't the number 3 guy.
Right. By 63, the number 3 guy was a man by the name of Richard Helms, and Hunt was his protege.
Yeah.
And so by 63, you got the Mafia still working with the CIA. Only people like Hunt and Barker and Richard Helms know. The CIA's own director, JFK's man by that time, he doesn't know. JFK doesn't know. Right. Bobby doesn't know. And then when JFK comes up with this incredible plan to kill, I hate to use these terms, but essentially to overthrow Fidel Castro on December the 1st, 1963, 10 days after Dallas, E. Howard Hunt and Barker are assigned to work on JFK's top-secret plan, and we'll tell you the rest after the break.
There you go, yeah. And in fact, also, we're going to tell you how Dick Cheney plays into all of this. And when we come back from the break, we have a short trailer from the Discovery Channel that will be playing from the special. You can hear it if you're listening on the radio, or if you're watching our video stream, you can watch it as well. Stick around. We'll be right back. Thom Hartmann here with you with Lamar Waldron.
This is the Thom
Viagra for your brain, the Thom Hartmann program. Just don't tell Limbaugh he'll want some. And by the way, it does not lead to stiff thinking. Okay, what is the new information that we've just uncovered in the last few months that ties together Dick Cheney, Watergate burglars, then the JFK assassination? On Sunday, the Discovery Channel, November 22nd, Sunday, November 22nd, at 8 p.m. ET, is going to be playing a special featuring Lamar and me, Lamar Waldron, the Lamar and I, the authors of of Legacy of Secrecy, as you can see in the book here. The Long Shadow of the Kennedy Assassination. Here is a trailer from that Discovery Channel piece. Hopefully.
Next Sunday, it's America's most debated unsolved mystery. Now, 46 years after his death, shocking new revelations.
The mob killed our president, and they got away with it.
Two contradicting theories. Who really pulled the trigger and why?
Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for killing a police officer, not for President Kennedy.
A back-to-back investigative look at the death of a president. Did the mob kill JFK? And JFK the Ruby Connection. It all starts next Sunday at 8. Sundays are awesome on Discovery.
There you go. Sunday at 8 on Discovery Channel. Lamar Waldron with us. Lamar, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, Tom.
Let's just recap very quickly the bombshells that are being dropped in this Discovery Channel and in the new updated paperback edition of Legacy of Secrecy, having to do with Bernard Barker, Richard Nixon, the plot to kill Jack Kennedy. Your turn.
Well, convicted Watergate burglar Bernard Barker was working one of America's most secret programs in November 1963, the plot to overthrow Fidel Castro on December 1st, 1963, 10 days after Dallas, totally authorized by JFK, Bobby Kennedy, in using the number 3 man in Cuba, Commander Juan Almeida. Bernard Barker was working on that as the assistant to CIA officer E. Howard Hunt. Bernard Barker was a low-level CIA agent. He was really working for the Mafia, whom he'd been working for years, Mafia godfather Santo Traficante. What Bernard Barker did was to sell out this top-secret coup plan, whose exposure could have meant World War III. He sold it out to his boss, Traficante, and that let Traficante and his mob associates, Carlos Marcello of Louisiana and Texas, Johnny Roselli, the Chicago mob's man in Las Vegas and Hollywood, let them use parts of that plan to try to kill JFK first in Chicago, then Tampa, and then finally succeed in Dallas, but do it in a way that forced poor Bobby Kennedy to work with his hated enemies like LBJ and J. Edgar Hoover to cover up a lot of information,
right,
not to protect the killers, but to protect the number 3 man in Cuba really working for us and to prevent World War III. Now, flash ahead to the Watergate investigation. All of this material is withheld from the Senate Watergate Committee, including Bernard Barker's Mafia ties. And then just a few years after that, Gerald Ford is president, one of the Warren commissioners. His chief of staff is Dick Cheney. And
now Dick Cheney comes into the picture here of the JFK assassination.
And just like as stuff has been withheld from Congress on Cheney's orders by the CIA in recent years, back in the mid-'70s, Senator Frank Church has a big committee exposing the CIA mafia plots to kill Fidel.
Right.
Even has a subcommittee headed by Senator Gary Hart looking at the JFK assassination.
Yep.
But all of this material is again withheld by the CIA while Cheney is Ford's chief of staff. And then Cheney becomes Ford's campaign manager while George H.W. Bush becomes CIA director. And again, I want to stress, Ford, Cheney, Bush 1 had nothing to do with JFK's murder, but a lot of information.
But everything to do with keeping us from ever learning how it happened or why.
Because there's no way Gerald Ford was getting reelected if all this came out and it made him look like a fool for not realizing this when he was on the Warren
Well,
Committee.
and because of Nixon's implicit role in this thing.
Well, and again, Nixon was so worried during Watergate, the time of Watergate, that it was going to come out that he had the CIA hire the Mafia to kill Fidel, and that somehow those plots had boomeranged on JFK, and it resulted in his death. That could have cost Nixon the election. That's why there were 3 break-ins at the Watergate and at the Chilean embassy and other places. And then we just keep flashing ahead to the current day when 1 million CIA records alone are still secret, even though there's a 1992 JFK Act requiring their release. If your listeners want to get all the rest of these files, they've just got to tell their senators and congressperson.
Right. So we're talking with Lamar Waldron. He and I have written a couple of books together, and Ultimate Sacrifice and Legacy of Secrecy, the new edition of Legacy of Secrecy with new and updated information and some pretty mind-boggling information that we were just, some of which we've recently discovered, much of which and some of which we can only legally recently reveal. And much of this is going to be in the Discovery Channel piece this coming weekend, but it's also in the book. And
I should add, we had so much information. There are literally 3 new chapters in the updated trade paperback, and lots of hints we had in the hardback where we couldn't name Barker, but we strongly hinted. So now we got to replace those hints. I should add the explanation for why Barker helps to explain the freeze in U.S.-Cuba relations since JFK's assassination is that now we have CIA documents showing that Barker's very close mob associates spread a lot of phony Castro killed JFK stories to the press and even within the CIA. These got to LBJ, and so it's the only reason we treat communist Cuba different than we treat communist Vietnam or
communist China.
It's because
where our president is right now.
For years, high-ranking U.S. officials, and some will go on the record, like former Secretary of State Al Hagen, they will say, "Oh no, Castro killed JFK," but all of that evidence has been debunked, and almost all of it originates with associates of Bernard Barker and Santo Trafficante. So those phony stories still haunt America today, keep you and I from going to spend time down in sunny Cuba.
Right. And in the 20 seconds we have left here, Lamar, and it all leads back to Richard Nixon trying to have an October surprise in 1960 to win the election against Jack Kennedy.
And it boomeranged on Kennedy, resulting in his death. It boomeranged on Nixon, resulting in his resignation. So again, and I do want to stress, because I never want anyone...
And Dick Cheney is still covering it up.
Well, and the CIA, too.
Yeah, there you go.
So people should tell Congress.
There you go. Tell Congress. And you can get a lot of information on the web over at legacyofsecrecy.com, the website that we have for the book, and which we are aggressively updating with new information, even as we speak.
And it's only the new trade paperback that has this new info.
That's right. Lamar Waldron, Thom Hartmann, the authors, Legacy of Secrecy, legacyofsecrecy.com, Sunday night, Discovery Channel. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
You're listening to the